Why are so many Orlando buyers hesitating right now? And when does that actually make sense? Hey, if you've been watching the Orlando Central Florida market and feeling unsure about whether now is the time to buy, you're not alone. And you're not imagining things either. And you're not behind. Daryl Dezek here, Central Florida Realtor, Orlando area. Oh, I got my little nice talk thing on here. So, what's going on, man? I'm having this conversation almost every day with buyers and sellers and people who are smart, thoughtful, trying to make a good long-term decision, not just a fast one. And I have my computer here, I got my notes. I'm checking as I'm talking to you to give you some good information. But I want you to know that I want to explain why so many buyers are hesitating right now. And just as importantly, when does that hesitation make sense? And when does it quietly cost you leverage? This is not a sales pitch, my friends. This is clarity. So let's put some context to this. What are buyers feeling? Well, let's name what's actually happening. And right now, the Orlando buyers are navigating, boom, three pressures at the same time. First, the interest rates are meaningfully higher than they were in 2020 and 2022. Think about your 3% interest rates, your sub 3%, maybe even your fours. Okay, that you people out there, if that's you, I'm talking to you. The second thing is that prices didn't fall in the way many people thought they would. They didn't expect it. They was like, the market's going to burst, and Chicken Little 2008 did not reoccur. And three, the constant media noise doing this prediction that's either going to be a boom or a bust, right? That's your national news media. They don't care about the accuracy. What they want is your emotional attention to keep you fixated on what they're trying to do. So that combination of those three things, interest rates, market not crashing, and media saturation of either let's make it a boom or a bust to get you emotionally addicted, those three things create a problem. And that is the feelings of mixed signals, right? It is mixed signals. And a mixed signal feeling, what I'm going to read out here, creates an indecisiveness. And the brain defaults to pause, right? I'm just going to wait this out. I'm going to pause. And there's a freezing up. Do I fight? Do I flight? Which one is it? So when is this hesitation rational? Let's find out. So there's a psychological principle here called the loss aversion principle. So we as human beings fear loss twice as much as we desire gain, right? Think of the pleasure principle, right? The fear of loss is twice as pleasurable than the joy of actually making a good decision. Or I'm sorry, not twice as pleasurable, twice as strong. Let me rephrase that. So buyers start thinking, well, what if prices drop after I buy? I hear that a lot. What if the rates come down and I miss out? And what if I overpay compared to someone who waits? Three legitimate questions. And emotionally, with those three questions, they say, well, waiting just feels safer. And so they do. Well, that doesn't automatically mean that the waiting makes sense. It just merely makes it feel protective. So let's look at what the numbers show us. Let's talk about the Orlando market, the Central Florida market, and what is it actually showing? Not the headlines, not TikTok clips, and I don't even want to talk, let's just talk real numbers. And according to the Orlando Regional Realtors Association, ORA, O-R-R-A, right? ORA, I'm a member of ORA, and the Florida Realtors, this is what is happening. The coolest thing is right now, we have inventory and supply. We are in what's called, or actually in a balanced market. We're very close to a balanced market. Inventory today is actually higher than it was in the ultra tight pandemic years. So in 2020, 2021, 2022, we had much higher inventory. But the inventory today is still below historical averages. Think about that. Higher than it was 4 years ago, but still below historical averages. In the Orlando area, we are sitting on just under 5 months of housing supply. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, a balanced market is traditionally around 6 months of supply. So we're at 5 months. And because we're at 5 months, it still favors sellers. Anything above 6 months favors buyers. So think of 2008, right? When the market crashed, houses flooded. You have tons of supply. That's why prices went down. 2020, 21, 22. right? Very short supply, 2 months, maybe a month of inventory. Prices skyrocketed because it was a strong seller's market. We're coming back to a balanced market. So in just under 5 months, this tells us something very important. It says buyers have more leverage now today than they did in 2021. But this is not an oversupply situation. So in 2021, you would put an offer on a house and compete with 20 other offers. And if you ask the seller for something, they'd look at you and laugh, going, take it as it is, high price and all, condition it is. Why? Because there's no more houses out there. But today, we have more of a supply. It's not an oversupply. And there's still competition, just not the chaos. So 5 months Orlando market, we have competition, but still not the chaos that we did in 2020, 2021. So what about the prices? Why didn't they collapse? So the median home price in Orlando is the low 400s. And depending on the report you use, you'll see some numbers ranging in the high 300s to low 400s. And that also is, you'll see in certain areas of Orlando as well, right? Pricing matters in your neighborhoods because real estate is local. Real estate is local. But that spread matters because it tells us that the prices didn't collapse, my friends, but they weren't accelerating right now. They're not accelerating like they did in the pandemic. I always tell new sellers, new buyers, if you purchased your home in 2019 and are selling it today, you can reasonably, depending on the neighborhood, assume that you gained about $100,000 worth of equity in about 24 to 36 months. You can say that reasonably. Right? That equity is starting to sag a little bit. Doesn't mean you lost it. It's just now that the prices are settling. So what we're seeing instead of this acceleration, we're seeing price resistance. Buyers are very sensitive to value today. Buyers are very sensitive to value. So what does that mean? It means that homes that are overpriced, homes that are poorly prepared, or priced for last year's market, those homes are sitting. They're waiting on the market. And at the same time, homes that are well priced, clean, realistic, they're still moving. And there's a big shift that many of those buyers underestimate. Sellers today, this is interesting, sellers today are far more open to concessions than they were 12 to 24 months ago. We're seeing things like a seller paid closing costs. We're seeing things like a rate buy down in which the seller pays. We are seeing a price reduction, sometimes even before the negotiation begins. When I look at the market, I like to say, okay, how many price reductions today? How many price reductions even before there's a contract on there? Realtors are saying, okay, we priced a little too high. We got to bring it down a little bit. But those things don't make the headlines, but they absolutely change the math. Let's check this out. This isn't 2021 chaos, and it's also not 2008. It's a negotiation market, my friends. We are in a negotiation market. And negotiation the negotiation market makes clarity necessary. It rewards clarity, not speed, right? We don't have to rush to get that contract in. We can be clear and say, okay, this is what I want. How do we negotiate it? So let's talk about rates. Let's talk about them calmly, shall we? Yes, rates are higher than they were a few years ago. We know that. But what matters most isn't the rate itself. It's the payment, the terms, and the exit strategy, right? How much a month are you paying? How long are you paying it? Are you doing a 30-year mortgage or are you doing a 15-year mortgage? Are you doing what's called a balloon payment, right? You pay low interest rate for a couple of years, it balloons up. What is your exit strategy and how are you leaving? When are you leaving? So on a typical Orlando home in the 400s, 1 point change in interest might improve or move the payment a few $100s a month. Right? So you buy down 1 point, you save yourself a couple $100 a month, 200 times 12. What are you looking at? 2,400, right? Back in your pocket. Not bad. And that matters. But so do seller credits, rate buy downs, and price adjustments. Right? Why are seller credits important? Because it keeps cash in your pocket. It means you enter the home with more cash in there. So, in this market, what I'm seeing is buyers reduce their effective payment, not by timing rates, but by structuring the deal well. And that's a different conversation than I should wait. Imagine this. Imagine if people treated their 401k like buying real estate. You know what? I'm not going to contribute to my 401k because the stock market might go down. I might not be buying at the lowest point. That's how people treat real estate. Not good. 401k is a long-term play. So same with real estate, a long-term play. So let's look at this clarity. Let's look at what happened in Orlando. So with a realistic Orlando scenario, right? Imagine a buyer who is financially stable. They plan to stay 5 to 7 years in their home, and they find a well-priced home. They hesitate. Ooh, not because the home doesn't work, but because they're hoping conditions improve. I found the home I like. I can afford it. It's good. I'm going to be there for a while for appreciation. Yeah, but I'm going to wait for the price to drop. In today's market, this is often what happens with buyers. They pass. Another buyer comes in, they negotiate the seller concessions and locks in the terms that quietly makes the numbers work. They lose out on the house. The opportunity wasn't speed, it was preparedness. Buyer number one didn't have the information they needed. Or they did, they were still emotionally connected to that of a loss aversion, as I mentioned earlier in this video. So, when does hesitation make sense? Let's talk about this. If the payment stretches your lifestyle, red flag. If you expect to move again in a month, a year or two, big. In those cases, patience is wisdom. A home should support your life, not dominate it. So the real question isn't should I wait now, or should I wait buy now or wait, right? That keeps people stuck. The question is, does this specific home at this price with these terms support my life even in this market? And even if the market changes? Does this specific home at this price with these terms even support my life even if the market changes? You buy a home, you're going to be there 7 years. Next year, the market takes a dip. You lose $5,000 on your home. You do a CMA. You call me. Here it is. Oh, you're minus 5,000 in that neighborhood. Okay, you still have 6 more years to make that up, and it will come back up. That's how professionals think. That's how long-term homeowners think. Not by predicting the market, but by making clear, guarded decisions inside of it. So, if you're hesitating right now, you're not failing, my friend. You probably just need clear information. And maybe someone to walk you through the numbers. Maybe not even just the numbers, to walk you through your life and get you to think about things like, how long am I going to be there? What kind of payment do I want? What impact is this going to have on my family financially? Right? And you need somebody to do that without pressure. So if you ever want to talk it through, I'm easy to reach. Slow down for clarity, because slow is smooth and smooth is fast.